The day has finally come upon us, the moment of truth. We finally have the Battlefield 2042 beta, and I want to talk about my first impressions, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the needs of work. And we're going to talk about all but one of those, so be sure to stick around to see which one that I skip over. Now, without further ado, remember, if you do enjoy today's video, don't forget to leave it a nice, thick, and juicy like as always. Of course, if you enjoy this kind of content and you want more like it, be sure to hit that big red sexy subscribe button right underneath the video. Also got to thank my channel members who guys help make these videos possible. If you're enjoying, get access to the exclusive perks that they get, and then be sure to check out that blue join button. Anyway, let's begin. So let's start off with the good. It's kind of like a meal. You want to dig in with the juicy red steak first because it looks amazing. And that also applies to Battlefield 2042 because my God, is this thing an amazing looking game. Whether it's the animations, whether it's the world, whether it's the tornado, whether it's the rocket exploding, so many things about this game that are just absolutely stunning to look at. I mean, there's even wildlife. If you fly the helicopter around, you'll fly through like birds and stuff. Like they literally put wildlife in this game, and that is really, really cool and adds so much to it, not only in just its visuals but also its atmosphere. The atmosphere of this game, I will say, is on par with Battlefield 1's when the action kicks up. That's a little bit of a subject for later in the video, but when it's at its best, the atmosphere is on par, if not better, than Battlefield 1, which is widely regarded to be the best atmosphere in the franchise, and the visuals play a very large part in that. The next thing we got to talk about is the gunplay. The gunplay is really, really good. It's kind of something of a continuation of Battlefield 5's initial gunplay before they started to jank around with it and make it not good. It's not what you think it is anymore, but in the beginning it was great, and this seems to be a continuation of that. It's much more focused on your ability to aim, and when you put bullets on target, they land on target, and that is a very good and consistent gunplay system, and you have that here. Another thing is the TTK. The TTK is very, very nice in this game. It's kind of just a nice sweet spot. It's not too long, it's not too short. And another good thing to report on with regards to the TTK is having tried armor myself in the game, because even though the armor specialists aren't in there, particularly Irish is not in there, you can equip armor as a gadget, and I did give it a go. There were some moments that it was useful, but overall I never found it to be something that's very helpful to wear. Like, it's not some insane, I don't want to say it's not life-saving, because the one instance that I did use it, it did save my life in a particular instance, but it's not something that I would want to actively run around with and take up my gadget slot. That being said, we don't know what it's going to be like with the other specialists in the game, so it could change that. But between shooting at people with armor on and having it on myself, it didn't seem like it was some insane TTK throw-off mechanic. It really wasn't too terribly bad. Might need more time with it, and again, with the other specialists that may change, but so far the report on it is that it's okay. It's not going to kill you. I never felt like I was dying purely because someone had armor on, so that was nice to find out. The next thing, continuing with guns, is the plus system. I love and adore the plus system. It makes you think about engagements before going into them. I know a lot of people were concerned that it would have an effect on your forethought before spawning in, and I think it more so buffs the ability to have forethought before going into a situation. Some people may not even think about using the plus system, and you could have a massive advantage over them by getting proficient with it, by knowing what setups that you have and are going to have going into particular areas. So if you have a versatile weapon like the M5, again, more on the M5 later, you can set it up in various ways for various situations. So if you need it to be more long range, you can set it up for long range. If you need it to be more CQB, you can set it up for CQB. It's totally up to you how you want to do it, and people who get good with the plus system, I think, are going to have a massive advantage in this game, because you're always going to be thinking about your environment and the engagements you could possibly get into. Now, one thing I do want to touch on, and I hope they do with the plus systems, I hope it's not just the attachments that we see here in the beta. I hope we can pick our favorite attachments that come with each weapon and add them to the plus system for that weapon, so that we have various amounts of things that we can put in the plus system and attach them accordingly, so we can have all of our favorite setups at once on the go, however we want them, whenever we want them. I think that'd be really awesome. And I know it's kind of a weird concern, but coming off of BF1 and BF5, where there was basically zero customization to your weapon, it would be nice to have that level of in-depth weapon customization. Next up, a bit of a departure, but it's gonna be vehicles. Vehicles were actually balanced decently well. I never felt like I was getting completely farmed by people. There were definitely some sweaty chopper pilots in there, but it felt like you could get away from them if if you needed to. There's plenty of traversal options. You could, I mean, most of the choppers honestly on that map hang out around the tower, so if you just avoid the tower, you're probably going to be okay. But again, it never felt like I was getting farmed. It never felt like anything crazy. Like sometimes in BF4 you'll feel like an attack chopper gets in there and he just starts farming the whole server. I didn't come across that. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, and that doesn't mean that it can't happen, but the vehicles seemed balanced. I did give them a go myself. They felt powerful to use, and there are definitely some things that I have concern with. I think the choppers have a few too many missiles that respawn too quickly, just because there was times where I'm just like firing on something. I'm like, okay, I should be out now. Oh, I can keep firing. I mean, there would be times I stopped firing because I thought I was out, because I was like, it'd be ridiculous to have more than this, and I still have half my salvo, and I'm like, oh, well, we're still going. But overall, I never felt like I said, like I never felt like any chopper pilots were down and farming everyone on the server. And I think there is a decent amount of mechanics and strategies that come over from Battlefield 4 that will be in this game. I don't think the controls are quite as smooth. They feel a little bit weird, and I would like to see them refine those a little bit. But in general, like I said, a lot of the depth, a lot of the strategy still applies. Now, that being said, let's slip into the darker side of things. Let's talk about the bad with this game. First things first, and I think everyone is talking about this, is the bugs and the optimization. This beta is pretty darn buggy, and whether it's getting definitely less than 60 frames per second on my Xbox Series X, or the world just kind of sputtering out and falling apart at random times and not working, this beta is not optimized very well. Now, it is a beta, and I'm sure I'm going to hear plenty, it's just a beta, and it is allegedly a 2-month-old build, so if that's true, I can give them a little bit of a pass, but it is a pretty darn buggy beta. Now, I do want to put in this disclaimer. Devs did say that a lot of the bugs in the beta they already knew about because it is such an old build, and they have already fixed them for the launch build, so that's good. Still pretty darn buggy. Now, in terms of balance and weapon balance in particular, I know I said the gunplay was good. That didn't mean that the balance is good. There's a very clear meta. It's M5 or die. That's pretty much it. Everyone is running the M5. Now, there's very good reason. It doesn't mean that the other weapons are not viable. It's just that the M5 is such a versatile weapon, and because of the way that the gunplay is set up, and because there's really not that much recoil, the M5 is going to be dominant because it has a decently high rate of fire, and even if you set it up to have the high power rounds and you have a smaller mag, and it's supposed to have more recoil, it really feels like the recoil you would normally have in a Battlefield game, and a lot of people can control that pretty well. So you can do some pretty darn good amounts of damage with the M5. It's pretty powerful. Now, there are other guns, like I said, that are used quite a bit. I found the Chris Vector, the K30, to be a little bit underused. I thought more people would be using it. The PBX45, I want to say, is another one that would compete with the M5 that I saw a lot of people using, and I used quite a bit myself. The AK-24, I'd say, is about on that level as well. Again, it's pretty versatile. I don't think it's quite as good as the M5. There are definitely times in, say, close to mid-range where the M5 beat me out using the AK-24, but it's definitely a solid, well-rounded weapon as well. Now, one thing that definitely needs to be fixed is both teams being identical. There's no distinguishing factor between either team, and this is mostly due to the specialists. And I'm not saying specialists are bad. I think they can offer some cool things to the game, but everyone looks the same. There's no aura or hue over a certain team to make them look different from the other, so unless you spot someone and they have a red dot above their head, they could very easily be on your team. I might say, oh, that's not an issue, your team will just have blue dots over their head, and that's true, but sometimes it doesn't pop in all the way, and sometimes the dots look a little bit transparent, and that makes it very difficult to see your own teammates or enemies. And it didn't get me killed too much, but it did definitely get me killed a few times. Now I want to talk about the map. The map is a bit too large, in my opinion. Some people see the size as a good thing, some people see it as a bad thing. I'm kind of in between, but I definitely lean towards it being a bad thing, hence why it's in the bad section of the video. If you look at it, essentially the two home objectives, not the spawn obviously, but the home objectives, I think it's A and I want to say F is the other one, they're completely pointless. They're almost never in the action. No one goes there. nothing happens there. And they're kind of isolated on their own way, so even if, say, a team got backed up and was getting beat real bad, it's almost impossible for that to happen because of how large the map is. I'm sure it will happen once the full game releases, but the action really stays around a certain few objectives in the middle of the map. And once you find that out, you can stick around those areas and make sure that you stick around the action, and that is pretty fun. But the problem is a lot of people end up getting really spread out. They end up in areas that are kind of pointless. I mean, like I said, I really only passed through the home objectives to get to the main objectives, and by having this action that's amazing, it's incredible when it takes off, but it's a little too few and too far in between for most people. It kind of takes away from the experience. And I've seen a lot of people talk about looking forward to Breakthrough because they can kind of have all the action there together, and it's going to be the more atmospheric mode, and I do agree with them on that. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this game plays in Breakthrough and seeing what the action of 128 players over a couple of objectives is going to be like. But as it stands, like I said, it's great when you're in it. It's a little too spread out though, for my taste at least, and a lot of other people's taste. This is a middle of the road sized map though for Battlefield. Some people are comparing it to like Sinai Desert in BF1 in terms of like, oh well, it's just a big map like Sinai was. Sinai Desert was, I think, the largest map DICE had ever made at that point, so it is a little bit different. And Sinai also isn't the best map. This could be the case with this map. It may not be the best map. There might be other maps in the game that are much better, and this is a middle of the road or even particularly bad map. We don't know quite yet, but I'm very intrigued to see how the other maps play out compared to this one, and especially the other modes, just to see how it flows differently in different modes. Also, one last thing I remembered while I'm editing, the revive animation is pointlessly long. I don't know why they didn't just copy paste the defibs from Battlefield 4 into the game, where if you hold it down, like if you're doing a squad revive, I guess you have the option to just do quick dit and you should have 20 health, and you can do a really long one and do full health, and then Maria should just be able to rub the defibs and then boop, you're alive. Like it should just be that easy. I don't know why we have to do this extremely long animation. I mean, it feels like anytime you go for a revive, it's a squad revive, and I don't know how many times in even Battlefield 5 the squad revive animation is so long. Like, why would you make that the main revive in the game? Like, people are not reviving, and I can't blame them. I think I got revived twice, 3 times maybe, and like had to be at least 10 rounds today. Why is it so long? It doesn't make any sense, and I'm not a fan of it. That definitely needs to be fixed. Now lastly, let's talk about what needs work. Gotta say, visibility definitely needs work. I didn't think I'd have to complain about this after Battlefield 5, but it looks like I do. Now granted, I don't think it's as bad as Battlefield 5, but there's definitely quite a few dark corners. That combined with the spotting being somewhat inconsistent. I mean, sometimes I could spot someone through smoke, like actively ping them, and other times someone right in front of me would not get spotted. It was really inconsistent, really weird. But between that, the dark corners, the bushes out of Assassin's Creed, which I don't know why they keep going that route with the bushes, but people like to hide in bushes. Granted, there isn't a prone meta like there was in BF5, so it's not as bad, but there were definitely a few people sniping in the bushes. It makes for a kind of rough around the edges visibility situation. Oh, and the fact that the factions look identical, not a great combination there. Those can be things that are worked out, but I'm interested to see how far that goes before the launch of the game. I do think maybe adding like a ring light around people would be nice, just to help you be able to see them. Maybe a ring light on top of shading the opposite team a different color. Like, again, the AI is shaded gray for the Russians and brown for the Americans. If they just did that over all the soldiers, depending on what faction they're in, I think that would help a ton. I know they don't want to mess with all the skins they're selling, but it just seems so pointless to have these factions be identical. It kind of throws off everything. Like, Battlefield is not Apex Legends, and I don't have to say that necessarily. You guys know that, but it doesn't play like a battle royale. And I thought I'd be making this analogy with the armor, but here I am with just the cosmetics and the visibility of it. You can't just go in with these skins that are universal when you have 2 separate teams. In a BR, you know, pretty much anyone you come across that isn't you or your friend is going to be someone to shoot at. So it doesn't matter if they look just like you know they're the enemy. In this game, that's not necessarily the case. Sure, if they have a blue dot or a red dot above your head, whatever, but when you're in the quick swiftness and chaos of the moment, sometimes, you know, say your friend is standing behind an enemy and the blue dot looks like it's above them. Well, you don't have any other way to identify what side that person is on. So having just those subliminal things, just these easy identifiers of the other team would be pretty nice. The next thing is the UI. The UI is not that great. It could use a lot of work. The spawn screen is kind of jank. It's number one, sometimes hard to tell where you're actually going to spawn. Like the ring just doesn't look very clear, and you can only toggle up and down for some reason. You can't toggle side to side. It's just not very intuitive. Same thing with trying to select vehicles. You have to go to some particular area and just, it's not the most intuitive user interface on the spawn screen. And then also things like the kill feed. While I do think that the kill feed is much better, I think things like having the point stack come up underneath where the names are would look a lot better than having it off to the side. Same goes for things like the compass. Some people want the compass there all the time. Personally, I think having the option to customize it would be way better and just the best option in general. So hopefully they go that route. That'd be pretty cool. I think that would satisfy everyone, because then you can have exactly what you want, whether it's the default or your own funky custom setup. You could have like your own in-game UI set up how you want it. Anyway, those are my early impressions of Battlefield 2042 and my thoughts on it. Let me know what you think of the beta so far if you have played it. If not, let me know if you're looking forward to it. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.